before once more to continue posting on our various social media platforms. We love to see your engagement. Before we start with our next panel discussion, just a couple of announcements. I want to see who has been actively paying attention, and I want to know if anyone here is willing to share something that piqued their interest, perhaps that one of the speakers had to say, any point in today's program that stood out for you. Anyone willing to share? Anyone willing to share anything they've learned so far today? Come on, guys, one person. Lady in the front here. Beautiful, thank you so much. There you go.
Hi, everyone. My name is Sabina. I think for me, what has stood out for me, it's important. That's quite important is almost the autonomy that we need to be given to our people. I think we're even just talking about it now. The way in which, as business and maybe even as the HR departments, we become so rigid in the way in which, we almost try and micromanage people. And I think in a space where, things are going, we're talking about AI, we're talking about, being creative, innovative, we need to give people the autonomy to actually release their potential. And I think that's for me stood out. Thank
100%. You. Thank you so much for sharing. And because you've shared, I actually have a prize for you. You and a partner, yes, you and a partner win VIP tickets to the awards tomorrow night. So you are most welcome to join us. Now, does anyone else want to share a point? Anyone else would like to share their point of what they've learned today so far? There's two over here. Let me grab the mic. Excuse me. Thank you. Let me go to the lady over here. There we go. Thank you so much.
Hi. I really enjoyed the discussion just before lunch, and the thought that resonated with me is the idea of what does it take to become a corporate athlete, given the changing world of work that we're living in, and how do we cope with things like AI and all of these new ideas that's coming at us faster than the speed of light. So what does it take to be a corporate athlete? I really like that. That was my favorite discussion of the day.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing. One more lady over there. I see your hand up. Making my way to you. Okay. There you go.
Thank you. What I found interesting was the note on authentic leadership and leading with empathy. So I think it drove...
So, all three of you ladies have won yourselves VIP tickets to the awards taking place tomorrow. And you are allowed to bring a partner as well. Please claim your tickets at the back. Apiwe is over there. She's waving her hand. That is where you can claim your tickets. Congratulations to the three ladies. Just goes to show you shouldn't be scared to speak up, right? You never know what can happen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, let's get into our next talking point. And that really is the subtle exodus, understanding and addressing the phenomenon of quiet quitting. We are going to have a panel discussion, and we will explore the concept of quiet quitting, its signs, its causes and implications for organizations, discuss strategies to detect and mitigate this phenomenon. So please help. One, two, there we go. We are back on. So as I was saying, the discussion is to explore the concept of quiet quitting, its signs, causes, and implications for organizations, discuss strategies to detect and mitigate the phenomenon to ensure a motivated and productive workforce. This is a panel discussion. I'm going to invite our two panelists to the stage. He is the head of employment and compensation law at Baker McKenzie Johannesburg, Johan Boertes, and the future of work coach Nikki Verd. Please give them a round of applause as they join me on stage. Welcome. Thank you. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Welcome to the both of you. Excited to chat to you. So the concept of quiet quitting. Nikki, I think let's expand on that concept and what exactly that means.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here once again. I remember the first time I heard about the concept of quiet quitting.
Yes.
In my mind, I thought, oh, it's something that someone gets tired with their boss or their company, and they take up their bag and go through the back door and like, bye-bye, I'm no longer here. But when I dive deeper into it, I realized, oh, it's actually something entirely different, where people quit, but they don't quit. They're still there, right?
Oh, elaborate, please.
Quiet quitting is essentially showing up to work at exactly 1 minute to 9 or 8, whatever time you're starting, and leaving exactly 1 minute after or on the dot. You know, you are there, but you're not there. You are not going beyond and above to do what is required of you. You're essentially doing enough not to be fired, you know, and enough to get
Just
paid.
enough to get by.
There, just to get by. That is essentially what quiet quitting is really
Interesting. Johan, could you then possibly expand on the signs? What are some of those warning signs that we can look into to say maybe this situation is taking place here?
Sure thing. I mean, and when we look at the concept of quiet quitting, you know, I mean, what Nikki described here, you know, one could be forgiven for thinking this is your average day at your typical Department of Home Affairs store, you know. But this is not what we want in the workplace. You know, we
Of
want
course
people
not.
to be engaged, to be there, showing up, you know, with a song in their heart and being committed to what we're trying to achieve there, and for them to actually self-actualize as well, you know. So some of those signs that we see in quiet quitting, and this is an interesting contrast. You know, we talked about the big quit or the great resignation, you know, after COVID, where people just left and said, listen, I'm out of here. You know, why would I want to do this? You know, this is just not working for me anymore. This value proposition doesn't work for me. And we had mass resignations, especially in specific industries where people quit and left. Quiet quitting is something completely different. You know, as Nikki correctly said, this is where people don't engage anymore, and that's one of the big signs of quiet quitting. People lose engagement. So when you sit in meetings, people don't contribute, they don't participate, they don't make decisions. You know, they are afraid to put themselves out there or unwilling to put themselves out there. It's typified by a lack of employee engagement or employees no longer engaging, and they just pitch up at work, do what is supposed to, you know, do the bare minimum not to get fired. But really, you know, they just don't want to be there.
Yeah. And Nikki, what would you attribute the causes to? Are people just demotivated? Are people overworked? Are they tired? What are the reasons behind this phenomenon?
It's all of that, all that you've mentioned. But what really brought us here, I think quiet quitting has always been there, but it wasn't given the attention, you know, that it has now. After the pandemic, or during the pandemic, when people finally were able to be out of the office, spend time with their families, spend time with, you know, with their loved ones, they realized, oh, it's actually, there's something more meaningful than work.
Sure.
You know? Oh, I could actually enjoy the company of my family, or the company of my friend or my friends, or just doing other activities that has nothing to do with work. So people sort of discovered something else outside of work during the lockdown. You know, and the people that discovered that, and they were like, oh, okay, I think I could do something else in my life other than work, they quit. Maybe they had some backup plan, they had a way they could survive. Those that could quit, they quit during that time. That was the great resignation that Johan has just mentioned.
Sure.
But then those that had bills to pay and like, oh,
Who couldn't
God,
afford to quit.
I really can't quit, but I really hate this job.
Yeah.
Then they stuck on. Those are the ones that are doing the quiet quitting. So what is driving that trend is really the aftermath of the COVID-19 pandemic, as we're seeing. Those are some of the consequences we're seeing. However, yes, there's that aspect of demotivation as well, where people are just not feeling the need to put in much in whatever job they are doing. So there's that aspect as well. And then there's the other aspect where people also feel overworked and not compensated for that, which I call that healthy quiet quitting, right? Because the idea of quiet quitting comes across like, no, everyone is supposed to go above and beyond. There are cases where everyone should go above and beyond, but there are cases where you are not required to go above and beyond. Do what what is required of you, and leave it there. For example, if, let's say, you are at work and your superior had some sort of a sick leave or resign or something, then you end up taking that workload, right, for example. And then the company, and then you're hoping, because you're doing your job and their job, when it's time for promotion, probably you will get that promotion, right? No, but it doesn't happen like that in some organizations. They actually bring in someone else, promote someone else, and guess who trains that new person? You. In that case, quiet quitting is okay. You're like, okay, I think I need to step back here because I'm definitely not being rewarded for what I have been doing.
It's what you've titled healthy quiet quitting.
That is healthy quiet quitting.
Sure.
Right, that is healthy quiet quitting, where if you know you're going beyond and above and there is no compensation for that, or recognition for that, you're not supposed to do that. But then there are people that no matter what you do for them, yes, you can even promote them. You can even give them what they are requesting of you. You can increase the salary. You can do all of that. But there are those people that will still not be satisfied. They are just there like, well, there's always something to complain about. No matter how good the organization is, no matter how brilliant their boss is, they will always find something to complain about. So that is another aspect of it. Quiet quitting is way deeper than just what meets the eye, And then there's aspect of mental health as well. Throughout the COVID-19, we faced a mental health pandemic that the world has never faced before. So many people are still recovering from that. So there is also that trend where it's not that they don't want to be there, it's just that they are dealing with so much, in their own personal lives and stuff like that. And then when you look at what happened early this year, the massive layoffs that happened, where some people were informed that they have been laid off via email, via Zoom call, via text message. I mean, that is horrible. That is a horrible experience for anybody to face. Now, the people that were not laid off, how do they respond to that? Well, I could be laid off any moment. What's the point of putting in extra work, So there are so many things that contribute to quiet quitting that we're seeing in the world today. Because if an organization cannot even have the decency to have a meeting and let the team know, sorry, this is what is happening,
this is the situation,
restructuring and all of that, to let people go in a dignified manner, right? And then you send these text messages or these emails to people, and the next morning they're preparing to go for work just to receive a notification, ting, 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 and sorry,
unfortunately,
you're no longer needed, right?
Yeah.
So the people that are left behind are definitely impacted by actions like that. So that's one aspect that is driving the quiet quitting, because people feel like I could give my soul to this organization and they can send me an email tomorrow morning that they no longer need me. So they feel they need, like, it's time for me to sit back. It's time for me to take it slow. It's time for me to just do what is required of me. And yeah, so those
Why
are some
give
of the
that
things.
effort if it's not being reciprocated?
Absolutely.
Johan, do you want to contribute to this discussion?
Sure.
Obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic had a huge impact on how things developed. But what are some of the other factors at play here?
I mean, this is such an interesting discussion, and Nikki's comments resonate with me. I mean, one of the worst examples that I've ever heard about how organizations should not terminate staff. There was a US organization, a company, and there was a factory somewhere in the States. Now they have at-will termination, so it's a different process there altogether. And the legend goes that the fire alarm went off, and all the employees rushed out, and when they assembled in the area there was an HR manager with a megaphone to say, okay, all employees whose access cards still work, you still have a job, the rest of you are retrenched.
Oh, my goodness.
So that is how you should not do it, and that is how you,
Right.
that is not how you will create a positive working environment.
No, not at all.
Where staff can get that self-actualization, where you can achieve what you want to, because this is the issue with quiet quitting. And if we look at the causes of quiet quitting, one of the causes of quiet quitting is where there's not a positive employee experience. And this is the challenge that we face after COVID. During COVID, we all realized, hang on, but I don't need to be in the office every day in order to do work. I don't need to spend 2 hours a day, making my way through traffic in order to be productive. But that experience is different for everybody. So definitely what we see in the workplace and what we see in respect of our clients that we advise on this, there's a need for more tailored solutions to try and deal with this thing. I mean, from my perspective, quiet quitting is something that a business should eradicate, and there are things that you can do in order to create an environment that lower the risk of quiet quitting. But, you want to have your staff engaged. You want to have them solving problems. Because if you look at the impact of this, there was a study done that estimates that $8.8 trillion, 9.7% of the world GDP is lost as a result of quiet quitting. How do you measure that? Because of the loss of productivity, for instance. So if people just pitch up at work and they just do the bare minimum, there's a direct impact on productivity. And there's a direct impact on work quality that is measurable. So if the message out into the employer community should be, quiet quitting is something that you should address. If you have people that are disengaged, if you've got high staff turnover, again, one of the indicators of quiet quitting, these are things that should concern you, and you should find ways of addressing that, trying to understand what is it that caused you. Frequent absences, absenteeism. I mean, quiet quitting is an example of presenteeism, where people come to work, but they're just at work and they just float around and do what they need to in order not to get fired. But absenteeism also is an indication of people disengaging. So if your sick leave usage is going up, if people are taking more annual leave or more absent without leave even, that should be one of the red light warning signs that go up with you and say, do we have an employee engagement problem here? Turnover is one of it as well. If you have an excessive staff turnover in your environment, that could be another factor that indicates that the level of employee engagement is bad. And what is the reason for that? Is it because people are being micromanaged? Because some of the causes of quiet quitting, includes poor management. Mm-hmm. It includes a lack of workplace flexibility, a lack of autonomy in the workplace. We talked about work-life balance. If you have a one-size-fits-all model mm-hmm. and says everybody's going to be in the office 5 days a week, meanwhile you're sitting with an accounts team that can readily do what they do from home. And if you want them to come in 1 or 2 days a week, I mean, that makes business sense. But if you have that sort of environment where there's a lot of autocratic decision-making taking place, where people don't have the right of autonomy, where they can't make autonomous decisions, those are the factors that lead to quiet quitting, and that you can pick up from turnover, from productivity, a loss of productivity, from a lack of employee engagement, and other factors.
Sure. Nikki, Johan touched on the monetary loss that can occur. He said something to the tune of $8.8 trillion US. It's a lot of money.
Yeah,
what are some of the other red flags on how this phenomenon can impact organizations?
It's in so many ways. When an organization has people that are not engaged, of course, it becomes a toxic environment and nobody really wants to be there. Mm-hmm. Because there is this aspect of passive aggressiveness, that continuously happen within an organization. Nobody wants to show up for work. There's usually a joke that I tell people. I say some people don't hate Monday because they hate their jobs. Because they can't stand their colleagues, they can't stand they can't stand their boss, So if you are a boss sitting in the room and your people can't wait for Friday, thank God it's Friday, maybe you're the reason, If you are part of a team and Friday, they're like, thank God it's Friday, but nobody wants to show up on a Monday morning.
Yeah.
Check yourself. Maybe you are the problem, right? So, those
just a tip.
Just check, you could be the problem. Because some people do love their jobs. But the colleague, oh my God, that person, we all know that one person. We know what I'm talking about, right? That one person. So when you are in that type of a work environment, you can give your best, even if you're not the person quiet quitting. The fact that someone is quiet quitting next to you affects you because it's a culture thing. Energy rubs off on people. If you come into the room with so much energy, the room takes that energy of you. And there's something about negative energy that just consumes everyone, So when you have someone in the team, just one person in the team who is quiet quitting, it affects the whole team.
Sure.
It affects the whole team. And when it affects the team, it affects the entire organization as well. You find out that the demotivation of one person is going to run through the entire organization or the entire team. So it is something that organizations need to, organizations have a part to play in mitigating this and making sure they solve this, but individuals themselves need to ask, I mean, is this the best of me? Because if you're quiet quitting at work, there is a likelihood that you're quiet quitting at life in general. So you as an individual, don't wait for your boss to come. One of the things I talk about, for those who know me and you've read my book, is about disrupt yourself or be disrupted, right? Because it's all about you. You need to come to that point where you're asking yourself hard questions. Is this the best of me? Maybe, rather, instead of quiet quitting, just quit, because you cannot be an environment and keep switching these different personalities where you are an absolute bitch at work. Forgive my French.
Bleep.
Right? And then at home, you are this angel with your friends. It doesn't work like that. That energy you have at work is going to also translate into other aspects of your life without even you knowing. It's not something like you consciously sit and plan. Okay, once I get to the door of my office, I will switch to mood, whatever, 6 p.m., you know? And then when I'm out, then no, it doesn't work like that. Before you know it, that becomes your identity. That becomes who you are, and it translates to how you relate with your friends, how you relate with family, how you relate with your kids. All of that translates. So it is not healthy for, as much as it has its disadvantages for the organization, it has disadvantages for the people who are practicing quiet quitting. You yourself, you're shooting yourself in the wallet, because who is going to refer you if you are in need of a job, knowing this is the type of person you are, knowing this is the way you carry yourself, you know? If I'm going to refer Johan for anything, my reputation is on the line. But if I've been around you and I've realized this is the type of person you are, and I found an opportunity somewhere, and I know this person could fit in, I'll be like, I'm not sure, you know? I would think twice about it, because I have been in your space and I've seen the way you carry on things. So if you're in an environment that you feel no longer serves you, you're no longer satisfied with your boss, you're no longer satisfied with your organization, the best alternative is to actually quit instead of quiet quitting.
I actually want to ask a question. There's actually a question here that segues into what you've just said. Mary from YouTube is saying, it's easy to say that we must quit, but what do we do if we cannot quit because of financial obligations? How do we navigate that? It's not always as easy.
No, I understand, and this is a difficulty, you know. For me, probably one of the most soul-destroying aspects about being an employee is when you get to that point where you say, the only reason I'm here is for that salary check at the end of the month. I mean, all of us really, really enjoy that salary check at the end of the month. And I'm right in the front of that queue. Okay. But if that is your only motivation, that is so demoralizing, and I don't wish that upon anybody.
Right.
You know, we live in a reality where we've got a 35% unemployment rate. So this is what makes it so challenging for us as employment lawyers advising clients as well, because there's a strong likelihood that if you're going to be fired as an employee, you are probably not going to get another job. You may not get another job in your lifetime. You know, and that's a huge burden that employers carry in dealing with this. But the best advice that I can give employers in dealing with this, you know, there are a lot of things that you can do in order to create an enabling environment, you know, within your workplace, to make sure that people can pitch up there, be their authentic selves, contribute, be part of the solution there, you know, have a culture there where everybody has this ownership mentality, all the nice buzzwords and buzz phrases we can think of, you know, the sort of people that you want to have in your workplace that's going to make a difference to your business. But I've also seen this, that you could have the most enabled environment. I mean, you can have the best workplace culture, but some people would just not fit into that culture. Some people just don't want to be employed. They just want to have the salary check, and they don't want to have, you know, all the business, because work is hard. Even if you have a nice job and if you enjoy what you're doing, it's still work. You know, it's still hard. So if you can make that assessment at an early stage already, and I know Nikki and I spoke about this earlier on, the best thing that you can do is to make the right hiring decisions. Get the right people in your workplace so that you limit the risk of people not fitting in there, not being the right culture fit, and feeling disengaged, even though the rest of the workplace is an engaged environment. Of course, if all your staff, or the majority of your staff, are disengaged, then that suggests that there's a workplace problem.
There's a deeper issue.
But even if you have a wonderful workplace, and you come across an individual that is quiet quitting, does not want to be there, my advice to you is, exit that employee from your business as soon as possible. There are few things as demoralizing as sitting next to a colleague where you are engaged, you want to work, you are putting in the extra effort, you really are committed to making this thing work, and you've got a colleague next to you that pitches you at 8 o'clock in the morning, takes the hour lunch, 4 o'clock, they're out of there like Paul Revere, and you're sitting there working until 6, 7 o'clock at night to get the stuff done. I mean, that is so demoralizing. I think at stages we err as employers by trying to convert people into the right employees when they're just not the right fit for your organization. So make those hard decisions earlier on. That's a lesson that I've learned in my own practice as well, the hard way over the years. Make those hard decisions, move on, get the right people into your environment. We've got a group of wonderful, talented employees and applicants out there. Don't be afraid of saying, this is not working for us. Love you like a brother, love you like a sister, but this is no longer working for us. Let's see how we can part ways amicably and get the right person in there.
You know, to add to the question that you just asked, for those that find it difficult to actually quit, but they are quiet quitting, two things are going to happen. Either they are going to step up, or the organization is going to end up having to let them go. Because when the organization know that, okay, this person is really not putting in the best that they know they are capable of putting, no company is going to put up with that unless you're working in your daddy's company where they can fire you, right? So at the end of the day, you're still going to lose the job, being forced to quit in a way. So it's better you step up or you quit yourself and you find another option because there's always something out there.
Yeah, because either way, a decision needs to be made.
And Johan mentioned something quite critical, that most of these problems can be solved at the HR level, at the recruitment level, right? I listened to one of the top CEOs, and she said something. She said they have a culture or a rule within the organization. No matter how good a candidate is on paper, one thing they ask every person they recruit, and it's a global company, right? And it runs in every country. One thing that they ask every person they recruit is, what skills have you learned in the last 6 months? What new thing, not even a skill, what new thing have you learned in the last new skill? Because this particular organization, they're looking for people that are continuous learners, people that push themselves through the limit. And she said, even if you had learned to bake a new recipe, cake or something, or you've learned to cook a new recipe as in a meal, or you've learned to do a certain hairstyle, or if you've learned something in the last 6 months, they will consider you. But no matter how perfect you are on CV, and they ask you that question and you're like, nothing, they're not going to consider you. No matter how perfect you are on CV, because they are looking for people with a mindset to constantly challenge themselves, to constantly learn.
Even if it isn't work-related.
It has nothing to do with work. It has nothing to do with what you studied in school.
Yeah.
Just a desire that, I learned to play tennis, or I learned to play new sports, or I learned to play whatever, but you need to have that mind. That
to continuously want to learn.
Continuously disrupt your mindset, evolve, to reinvent yourself. Check out what is happening. What are the new trends? Learn something, right? If it's in your field, that's even a bonus. But what they're looking for is someone who has learned anything in the last 6 months, new, something that they didn't know before.
Interesting. We've got another question, Johan, and it sort of ties into what both you and Nikki were speaking about earlier. Having a colleague in your organization that is quietly quitting and they're draining that energy from you, and slowly you find yourself getting into that pattern as well. Sasha asks, how can organizations empower employees to express concerns without fear of repercussions, ultimately helping to identify and address the issues of quiet quitting early on?
That is such a good question, and probably in practice, particularly difficult to implement. I think what we're all trying to do in our respective organizations is to create a culture where people can speak up and say, I'm not well, things are going hectic with me, I'm struggling at home, I'm struggling with this, that, the other, I need space, I need help, I need assistance. In practice, it's really difficult to do that in most organizations. There's a fear of victimization, there's a fear of stigmatization. So what we have found, efforts that help and that we see implemented in our workplace and with clients, is to have trained people that are not necessarily the managers, the partners, the business leaders, that are capable of having those discussions. We call ours the point one contact person. So we've got a group of staff members that are trained in having engagement with staff. where you know that that person over there is a trained point one contact person, and I can go and have a safe space discussion with them and say, I'm struggling, and they would know what resources do we have available, what sort of EWP assistance can we make available to you. Because quite often it's very difficult to have that discussion with your manager, you know, and it may be a loaded discussion to have even with HR. You know, so if you create communication channels where people can raise these things, in our experience, it certainly assists in giving people that space where they can proactively raise it. But it's a tricky challenge.
Yeah, that's not easy. So how then do we tackle this issue? What are some of the things that can be implemented to mitigate and to ensure that it's eradicated in an organization?
I think that we've already touched on that, especially around, you know, the role of HR in looking for the right people, you know, from the very onset. At least you do your best. Sometimes some bad apples still slip through, but if HR can improve their recruiting process, check what is the culture of this particular organization and who is going to be the right fit for this organization, that can actually eliminate the problems before they actually happen. I was sharing with Johan earlier on, you know, how some companies, they pride themselves in being able to go to a particular institution and pick out the best performing students, you know, the students that come out on top. They have distinctions. They are the A-grade students. You know, that is how they recruit. But there is a flaw in that process. They're thinking they have the best people because these people came out top in the university. But being top of class does not always translate to being top in your organization or fit in with the culture and things like that. So the way recruitment is done needs to be disrupted in a way where you're looking at, can this person fit in? Instead of, no, this person is from this prestigious university. It will do well for us, so come in. This person is from, or I know their grandfather, or I was friends with their mom, you know, come in. That is how some recruitment is done.
Yeah.
So with that type of recruitment, you end up with people that are quiet quitting within an organization. So if recruitment can be done the right way, based on culture, based on can this person fit in, does this person have the right skills that we're looking for? If it is done that way, most of these problems you're talking about, it will be eliminated. But if you're going into a particular school and you're picking A-grade students, who will not translate that sort of distinction in the world of work is completely different. What you are ending up with, like Johan said earlier, was that you are ending up with people who have the ability to memorize and speed up these things in an exams paper. That's really what it means. Because there are so many people in the world today that did so well in school, but are struggling to fit in corporate world or even in the
100%.
business world generally.
I think let's leave it at that point. We've run out of time, unfortunately,
you.
but thank you very much, Johan and Nikki, for joining us. Very interesting
welcome.
conversation. That was Johan Boerters, Head of Employment and Compensation Law at Baker McKenzie, Johannesburg, and Nikki Verd, Future of Work Coach. Thank you so much for your time. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to get into our final point on the program this afternoon. It is another panel discussion. This time we are touching on nurturing financial empowerment, a people-centric approach to financial literacy. So the gig economy paradox, navigating a shifting landscape of careers and financial security. Join us for an insightful discussion that dives into the changing dynamics of retirement planning in the context of modern career trajectories. For that, please help me in welcoming onto stage our speakers, Mr. Wouter Fourie, CEO at ASCOR Independent Wealth Managers, also Dr. Ponzo B. Mokoena, Principal Officer at Barlow World Medical Scheme and One Barlow World Retirement Fund, and lastly, Jonathan Mutige, Group Chief Human Capital and Transformation Officer at Alexander Forbes. Welcome. I think I'll sit over here. Please have a seat.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. So, Wouter, I'm going to start with you. As the author and director of ASCOR Independent Wealth Managers, how are modern career trajectories changing the way that we need to plan for retirement?
Abigail, thank you for the opportunity. Got to tell you, there's a big bright light shining on. And to understand the future of retirement, we actually need to go back and look at the history of retirement. Now, a wake-up call for most of us is that retirement is not a biblical subject. And if we look at retirement, the first time we saw retirement coming into play was in the 1880s, where Otto von Bismarck, the counselor, planning into the concept that we know today. And at that stage, it wasn't an issue because longevity wasn't a problem. People retired at the age of 60, and life expectancy was about 62. So government could support retirement structures. Moving forwards into the 1900s, where we are, where some of us went to school in the 1980s, we saw that the defined benefit funds was a leading structure that was used for retirement. Now, a defined benefit fund means that you join the employer, they take the responsibility, and the day that you retire, they pay you a certain pension for the rest of your life. Usually, that lasted up until date of death, and companies also realized that longevity is starting to play on the balance sheet. So they needed to provide more money for people getting older. And that's where defined contribution systems came into play, where you take the responsibility to save for your own retirement, and you need to be responsible to look after yourself until the day you die. Again, that's not a strange concept, and it sounded good, but guess what? Medical advancements change this environment. We are getting older. We live longer. And most of us work a period of 30 years, and we might find ourselves in retirement for longer than 30 years, 40 years, maybe even 50 years going into it. Now, coming back to the question, looking at the future is also a challenge for us, because longevity, we need to provide for longevity in our planning. Are you ready to provide for yourself in retirement for another 30 years? Now, the challenge I find facing clients on a daily basis is sitting with them, and they tell me that they've got X amount of money, and this needs to last for the rest of their life. We also see that medical expenses have picked up. Mm-hmm. We also see mobility in terms of the way people work. They don't stay with the employer long enough anymore. They move around. Hopefully, the new two-pot system that looks like it's going to be implemented next year will have an effect on that. I'm very pro the two-pot system, and I think that's also going to play a role in the future. And then, of course, AI. Artificial intelligence will change the job environment. It might even replace some of us. Challenges that we face in the future for retirement.
Dr. Ponzo, I want to come to you because the employment dynamic has evolved so much. People are freelancing more, some people are self-employed, some people are entrepreneurs. Those type of individuals, what do they need to do in order to ensure that their financial planning and retirement plan is in place? What are some of the tips and tricks that you could advise on how individuals who have non-traditional employment can move about and achieve some sort of stability when they decide to retire?
No, thank you, Abigail, and good afternoon to everyone. You know, I like what my colleague mentioned here about the history of retirement funds, and you know, if you'll allow me, I'll also take a step back. I think we've all seen the statistics that National Treasury, I mean, it's plastered everywhere. You know, that National Treasury states that only 5% of South Africans will retire comfortably. You know, that's a very scary statistic. It's been around for a while, you know, I mean, year on year, that's how we start a lot of our conversations in the retirement fund space, by citing that statistic. And really the evolution of work. You know, and the previous speaker spoke about, you know, post the lockdown, a lot of people found really maybe their passion and converted it into almost, you know, a working model for themselves, or a working structure. And so we have now a situation where we've always struggled, you know, to save for retirement as a country. Mm-hmm. You know, South Africa is known to not have a good savings culture. You know, so that's just exacerbated it. And so this 5% of the population that is likely to be able to save comfortably for retirement, it's only going to widen with the way of work. You know, whilst we support that people must find avenues to, you know, to create an income for themselves, given the statistics around 33% of South Africans are unemployed, you know, it's then how do we then balance that out with these structures that are tried and tested, that sit within, structures such as the retirement fund that almost force us, to save for retirement fund. So I think as a starting point is that it is going to widen that 5%. It's going to make that 5%, get even smaller and smaller. And we're going to see even less and less people being able to save quite comfortably for retirement. We know that for you to save comfortably for retirement, you need, in excess or somewhere around 12 times your annual salary, in your pot on date of exit. So that's quite a high amount, for people to save up. And what we're seeing, which is why the two-pot system is something that is coming into effect, is that obviously historically when you leave an employer, a lot of people cash out, those funds, and they attend to immediate needs with those funds, and so those people get to retirement and aren't able to replace their salary. We usually target in the retirement fund space somewhere in the region of 70% of your replacement ratio. We're assuming at that point that you've paid up, things like your mortgages, et cetera, school, you no longer have school-going children. However, that's not always the case, and as my colleague has highlighted, we're living longer, we need more because we are living longer with medical advancement, et cetera. And so with the advent of that, some innovative ideas, need to be thought of, in those structures so we can support people to be entrepreneurs, to close that, unemployment gap, but still making sure that people are able to save for retirement. And there are some tricks and tips, as you asked me earlier. When I was doing my master's studies, one of the things I looked into was, there's always this concept that South Africans don't save for don't save. We don't have a savings culture. But if you think of the Stokvel environment, and I'll use that word loosely, we've got 49 billion that moves through that structure annually. So this is 49 billion from people who are historically called, people who don't have a savings culture. And so what does that tell us? It tells us that when people are with people they know and people they trust, they actually change their habits because those structures work. They work better than what we have in even the retirement fund. They don't quit. They do not contribute. And if you were to take somebody like that and ask them to save into any vehicle on their own, they're likely to default. But my study showed that those people actually never default in that structure, and it's because you're with people you know. You don't want the shame almost of missing a payment within a structure such as that one, because these are your friends, this is your community, these are your colleagues. For some of those people who set up stokvels and savings units within an employment vehicle. So those are some of the innovative ideas we may need to start thinking about, that can help support people who go the entrepreneurial route.
Sure. Jonathan, I want to bring you in here. I want to expand on the concept of the gig economy, exactly what it means, what it entails, and also how that impacts on the influence, how it impacts rather on retirement planning.
Thank you, Abigail, and good afternoon. I think it is an interesting concept, the gig economy.
Mm-hmm.
And upfront, I would suggest that I think if you use the word gig economy, you're very sophisticated. You are probably at the top end of your game. I think most people are just dealing with the hustle every day. So
very true.
If you look at the statistics that says 42% of South Africans are unemployed, whether they can't find work or they've given up, that's a huge amount of people that every day are hustling to survive. And maybe that's a more simpler summary of what the gig economy is about, right? Where you don't have formal employment like me and a number of people. So I think that's the one big reality that we have. Thinking about the challenges to the subject that we are talking about, I think we have a number of challenges. The first one, which I think we should grapple with a bit more, is the very concept of retirement. I wonder how long that currency will last. Because, if you talk to a lot of people, now, it's too foreign a concept. It's very far. And the reason why the things that Vota, and Kuluku are talking about are an issue is because it's too far dated. people worry about the immediate day-to-day, and once in a while they will worry about, hang on, if I get hurt, where will I get help? So for most people who are involved in a day-to-day hustle, it's a survival game. So these things become very difficult, but there is, I think, that narrow band of people that, have got it figured out, are looking for various solutions. And when you start thinking about the solutions, I think we have to think about it from two perspectives. There are those who choose to go into the gig economy by choice. That's the life they want to live. And if you engage them, they will tell you about the lifestyle they want to live, the sort of resources that they're looking for. And that's where my friend here on the right will come in, right, to advise them on how do you manage your finances, how do you get all of those things. You have a category of people that are hustling, not by choice, because we just don't have enough work. So they will hustle for a while. You might categorize them as gig economy participants, but they don't relate to that. It's a temporary state. So they get employment, then they're out of there permanently. But the reason why I'm talking about these categories is because increasingly, people are staying in that space a lot longer. So when they enter corporate, when they finally get that job, they don't want to leave. So maybe the previous conversation starts to apply. But the issues that we would face from a human capital perspective is those individuals put you under a lot of pressure for their retirement planning, forgetting that they entered very late. And so the challenge in my view is, how do you help those individuals catch up? And so my final point is, I think we have to start shifting the dialogue to talking about life stages and lifestyle choices, and help people with the literacy to plan for that. Then, what happens at the end is a different conversation. So, as I stop talking, at my age, having worked for 30 years or so, even I can't embrace the concept of retirement. I'm thinking about, so at some stage I must transition from, working for somebody full-time and do something else. That's the mindset I have, and that's how I think about it. So the question really is, how do you cater for all these different dynamics? How do we build sufficient financial planning literacy so that people then own it? And I think the general literacy on financial planning is very low. If you ask people in this room to raise their hands as to how many of them have really spent time with a financial planner to think about their lifestyle and life stages, you'll probably find not enough hands. If everybody raises their hand, I would be delighted. But that's not the norm, so I think those are some of the challenges.
An interesting conversation, Vota. How then do we advise those people who are in the gig economy to plan for their futures? And I want to tie it into a comment that we've received on YouTube. Someone says, the best thing my dad did was encourage that I independently pay for retirement annuity at the start of my career. In my 20-year work experience, only one employer has offered medical and provident fund. Is this the direction that people should be taking, making sure that they themselves manage this?
I want to compliment both my colleagues in terms of what they just said now, that the main thing that we need to focus on is education. And even if you're part of a stokvel, it's part of education. People actually educate you the habit of saving. Also talking about the gig economy, totally agree with you in terms of the hustling. And what we need to realize that the responsibility to provide for yourself is with yourself. So the old concept of pay yourself first is relevant. And we've seen that companies have pension structures and provident structures, and even individuals who are not permanently employed have that ability to use a retirement annuity. There are fantastic tax benefits in using it, and I'm quickly going to explain one of it. So if you take R1 of your current funds and you invest it in a retirement annuity or pension fund, you get your marginal tax rate back. That means you immediately have a guaranteed return on investment, more than you would probably make trying to run a company. And we need to take responsibility, each and every one of us. Even if you're employed, you'll find that your contributions towards your retirement fund is, in most cases, not sufficient to provide you with a 70% of your final salary, etc. So again, the responsibility comes back to us, the responsibility to educate yourself, And please, let's educate the next generation as well. Let's invest in our children. If you don't know about finances, I do agree, find a financial advisor, have that appointment, and just educate yourself. Also make a point of reading. There's a lot of information on the internet. There's a lot of information on your pension funds. The trustees of the pension funds can assist you. You need to take responsibility yourself.
Dr. Pons, I'm going to come back to you because as we've been discussing, employment types are changing. It's evolving. Do we need to see the retirement sector keep up and evolve just the same? Are we seeing that change happen already?
No, thanks, Abigail. I do, and I think to pick up from what Walter mentioned around education, one of the things that's because of this change in landscape, what's forced us, specifically now, if I take it home to Barlow World in terms of our retirement fund, because of the change in landscape and us trying to keep up, to use your words, because we do now employ a lot of young professionals in the business, we've had to, introduce a very high amount of flexibility within the retirement funds. We were quite, within our structures, we were quite rigid before. It was, this is your employer contribution, this is your employee contribution, these are the benefits, you've chosen to work for this organization and this is the package. And one of the things we've introduced as of last year was flexibility, and it is because we are actually trying to keep up. We're trying to make sure we are able to attract the right talent into the organization. I don't necessarily sit actually in the HC space. We take benefits so seriously that we've crafted them out of HC and we place them within my department, which is risk and insurance. So they're looked after by us as actuaries, and we're able to then craft the products that we believe are actually well suited for the organization. But certainly there is an element of keep up that we've had to action. And one of those was just really playing around with contributions, but really trying to make sure that whatever we leave as the floor, it's not a floor that doesn't assist our members still get to retirement, but one that can still help us attract the kind of talent that we want. So we've had to engage a lot of flexibility.
Sure. Jonathan, I want to expand on that point with you when it comes to the retirement sector keeping up to the ever-evolving and changing landscape of the employment sector. In your opinion, how do they do that?
And I think what is right, actually. It's about creating that flexibility, in the structures that we provide. And to the point I made earlier on, I actually think it's about focusing more on financial well-being, over time. I think if we can get that right, then we should be fine. And then maybe the third point is about understanding the needs of this employee generation and responding to their needs first, rather than responding to the needs that we believe they will have. So there is a bit of a mismatch in the dialogue, right? We're talking past each other, and I think we have to, first localize the conversation in what these individuals are looking for, and then have the right flexibility and choice. Then they will own it.
Let's open up the floor to any questions that we might have from the audience. Do we have anyone who has a question for any of our panelists so far? There's a question over here. The mic is coming to you. There we go.
Good afternoon, colleagues, and thank you to the panelists. I think the question is addressed to any one of the panelists who can take on it. My question is, looking at the economy of South Africa currently, and that from COVID being affected by people getting employed later in life, and also the projected lifespan of South Africans as we look at it now, looking at the weaker rands and the projected value of the rand when I reach the age of 65, when I need to retire, the retirement annuity is becoming more and more expensive for South Africans. What ways would you suggest that as we move forward as organizations, that we support income and subsidizing retirement annuities for employees so that they are able to live beyond employment, so that when they retire, people are then able to say, I used to live on $5,000 a month, and now that I've retired, projection was I should be living at probably 6,000, obviously looking at the forecast and the rent value in the future. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Can I touch on that? I think the first part of the question, so thank you, it's a very, very long question, so I'm going to try and break it up in a few answers. So I think the first part, talking about retirement planning and saving towards retirement and be subject to a South African economy that is battling. I mean, our economic growth is sitting at 1%, maybe 1.5% if we're lucky. And you're trying to save for retirement and you focus on that growth to provide you with a retirement income. Luckily, we've got the ability to invest in a stock exchange that is local as well as international. So although the economy is growing at 1%, you will find that if you've got a diversified portfolio, it will grow at 9, 10, 11, 12%. So there's extra growth by doing it. You're actually protecting yourself against the South African economy if you invest in a retirement annuity and you've got like a balanced portfolio. The second part is if you look at employers contributing or assisting employees in terms of contributing towards their retirement funds, that depends on the specific company. And again, what we say is it's part of your package, so it's a taxable benefit. And if you put the choice in front of employees, providing for your family, buying bread, or contributing towards a retirement fund and it's deducted from your salary, you'll find most people try and feed their families. And also moving out of South Africa. A lot of us refer to documentation and research done internationally. It's different. South Africa is a different country. We've got different challenges in our country. High unemployment. We've got what we call the sandwich generation, where we look after our children but also after our parents. It puts a lot of pressure on the person employed to provide for a structure for himself, herself, or retirement. And I think that comes back to what we said earlier. Education, equipping yourself that you're employable all over. Not just in your current position, but you need to make yourself employable elsewhere. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a lot of information on the web that we can research. There's a lot of training that you can do. You can equip yourself. It's a question of you need to step out and make a change. Don't wait for somebody else to change you. You need to take the responsibility.
Thank you. I hope that answers your question. Any more questions from the crowd? There's a question over here. Lady in the white shirt.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
That is loud. This question is for Ponzo. What are your thoughts on the two-pot system that the government is busy implementing?
Sorry, you addressed it to me.
Ponzo.
sorry.
Dr. Ponzo.
I couldn't hear.
No, thanks for that. As of yesterday afternoon, there was a bit of flip-flopping again that happened. So we are back on for March 2024. And I think if we go back to some of the comments I made earlier, I think it's a mechanism to force us to save towards retirement. I think I certainly am pro two-pot. So that's something that we're driving from an education point of view with our members as a positive. We are sending out the communique. We obviously are concerned around whether the systems are ready and geared for that. But we're certainly pro two-pot. We are concerned about this, this pot that you can keep accessing constantly. But at the end of the day, if we then have 2/3 that remains preserved right up until you reach retirement, we're starting to have different conversations, I think, as a nation. So certainly pro two-part, and I think as professionals in the room, it would be prudent if we actually do support the government on an initiative like that, given the statistics that we've all highlighted here today. So certainly pro.
Thank you, Dr. Ponzo. I hope that answered your question. The lady in the blazer here had a question. I will come to you right after. There we go.
Thank you for that. So I also agree with the two-part system. I think it's great. Recently, I've been thinking a lot about how to get employees to want to invest more. I recently had a conversation with someone, she's actually quite senior, she's at an executive level, and I'm in the process of buying and selling my place. And I realized she's older than me, and she hasn't even thought of buying a place, she's just comfortable. And I said to her, if you don't make the move by 45, you have 20 years to pay off that bond. It's a good thing to think about. And surprisingly, a week later, she actually said to me, you know what, it's something she's going to consider. But then I realized that I'd like to get more people thinking about it. So in our company, we do give employees a lot of options. So with the Provident Fund, with Old Mutual, they get to choose where they want to invest their money. There's about 50 options. But also in terms of contribution, we contribute 10% to all employees, and they have flexibility. They have 4 options to choose. The minimum is 5%, then it's 7.5%, etc. Majority of employees choose 5%. And I'm trying to think about how do I get them to consider investing more or choosing a higher option, even if it's not the highest bracket, just going from 5 to 7.5, which is the second option. Are there any initiatives that you can think of that I could use to encourage more investment among employees? Think about their retirement and their, just their investment, their future, etc., etc.
Jonathan, are you able to take this one?
Yes.
Okay, go for it, Vota.
I'd like to add on to that. Compliment you for encouraging people to save more towards retirement. The professional body in South Africa, the Financial Planning Institute of South Africa, has a voluntary course that they present called My Money 123. So go onto the website, the FPI websites, and also on My Money 123, and you will find information on the basics of education, how to budget, the difference in terms of good debt, bad debt. And I think, again, it's back to the basics. You need to sit and train, or not train, teach people, educate them in terms of the basics, and then they can see the bigger picture. If you just focus on you need to increase 1% or 2%, you're probably going to lose the battle. You've got to change their mindset about it. And again, please visit the FPI website and you'll find some more information on education and education programs.
If I may
Yes.
add onto that, one of the things that we hear a lot from our members is that they believe that they can save themselves better than the retirement fund can. They believe they can find better assets, etc. So I think one of the other ways you can encourage your members to contribute more is by being innovative within your investment committee structures. So some of the things we're starting to look at is a lot of the private equity models that are coming up, because if somebody believes, even if it's at a 0.05%, if they believe they have ownership into a mall that's being built in an area or in a community that's developing, that tying in with the question we had earlier around, how do we navigate saving within, this depreciating rand, and how do we make sure the rand keeps up, from a purchasing power point of view. We need to align it to the assets that are also growing, at that same rate, and cash is unfortunately not that asset, So we're looking at a lot of private equity models within our retirement fund. We're looking obviously at those mechanisms that still comply with Regulation 28, but that are innovative enough to get somebody, if you believe you own a property somewhere within some small structure, you're unlikely to try and disinvest from something like that, because you want to make sure that you see something like that to fruition. So it's to have those types of conversations with your investment committee if you are able to.
Yeah, I mean, the only other point I was going to add, again, I keep harping on about this financial well-being, and structuring it around what people need. So if you take the example you're giving, if you say to somebody, choose, you can do 5% of retirement, it's again still too far, right? And if you look at what they do with their disposable income and you look at the number of employees that are borrowing money in the streets and everywhere else, they actually, even you giving them 5% choice is too much because they can't afford it. So perhaps the conversation has to be around what are some of the other savings instruments that we should get our employees to take up that help them with some of these short-term needs. Then I think maybe we'll create some headroom for them to think about, the longer-term stuff. I think you mentioned retirement annuity. If you say to people, I'm not going to do, your retirement fund, but you need to have something, most people will go straight into the street and get retirement annuity. Why? Because they see that as relatively low value. I'm not, until they wake up one day and realize, oops, my needs have now changed. But in between that choice and when they wake up, and I don't think we have the full solutions yet, is how do we capture the imagination of this group for themselves?
100%. We had another question from the lady at this table in the white blazer. If you could hand her the mic, please. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for a great day one of conference and a great panel discussion. My question is directed to Mr. Fourie. What advice would you give to employees who get to a certain point in their careers and they realize that they haven't saved enough come retirement?
So it's not a strange question. It happens quite often. And the basic concept, if it's never too late. It's never too late to start. That's the first concept that you need to take into mind. And the next one, as I said, the different options available. So in the past, we looked at retirement, and retirement was a specific date. It was age 60 or 65, you retire, you go home, you sit under the tree. Life has changed. Reaching the age of 65, re-educate yourself. So it's not retirement, it's actually like a rewiring yourself, making sure that you can do something else. So in the build-up towards retirement, you've got to have other abilities to generate income. You've got to make sure there's other ways to support yourself and your family. Ladies and gentlemen, if we depend on government to look after us and we depend on our employers to look after us, we will be disappointed. We need to look after ourselves. I hope I answered your question.
All right, thank you. I think that's where we are going to wrap up this panel discussion. Very interesting conversation. To our panelists, thank you very much for your insights and for sharing this afternoon. Vota Fourie, CEO at Ascor Independent Wealth Managers, Dr. Ponso B. Mokoena, Principal Officer at Barlow World Medical Scheme and One Barlow World Retirement Fund, and Mr. Jonathan Mutiche, Group Chief Human Capital and Transformation Officer at Alexander Forbes. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Please give them a round of applause. All right, so Vota has been kind enough to gift someone here today the ultimate guide to retirement in South Africa. Honestly, I was hoping that I could keep it for myself, but I won't. I think the person who deserves this is the person who was brave enough to ask the first question with the blue blazer. Congratulations. This is yours, courtesy of Vota. Congrats, enjoy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of day one of the Future of HR Conference 2023. And what an amazing and fulfilling day it has been. Just before we wrap up, oh, we have an announcement. Anyone lost their car keys in the ladies' bathroom? Please have a quick look through your handbag, through your pockets. There's a quote on the keychain. If you can recite that quote, I know that it's your car keys. I'll hang on to them in the meantime. If you discover that you've lost your car keys, they are here with me. All right, so that wraps up day one of the conference. So all of our ticket winners for the VIP awards, please make sure that you collect them from Apiwe. She is in the back there. Everyone who's been active on social media, we are going to announce those winners tomorrow. Just going through what is up for grabs in conclusion. There's a lucky draw. Bring your business cards and you could win a 2-night stay at Eclipse Executive Suites. There's also a 1,000 Rand Country Road voucher, 1,000 Rand exclusive books voucher, and 1,500 Rand iStore voucher as well. You could also win 3 more seats to the Future of HR Awards that are taking place tomorrow. That's worth 12,000 Rand. So big congratulations once again to those 3 ladies who already have those tickets in the bag. We will see you back tomorrow. But before we wrap up, let's give a round of applause, and I'll ask all of you to please stand up as we thank our sponsors. We know that without them, today was absolutely not possible. I just want to give a big round of applause to all of our sponsors for making today possible. And yes, ladies and gentlemen, that wraps up the first day of the conference. It's been absolutely amazing moderating and emceeing for you today. I am Abigail Fasahi, and I hope to see you tomorrow. Take care, drive safely.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a God saying I can take it for a ride. I had the premonition, now I found a rhythm where the music don't stop for life. Glitter sky, glitter in my eyes, shine just the way I like. If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time. You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way is liberating, yeah, 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 yeah. I got you.